Jimenez and Spence on 94.1 San Antonio Sports are on the go at ESPNSA.com. Let's talk some Dallas Cowboys. I thought SI completely insulted America's team today. That's got to be the second or third best team in the NFC right now. And SI coming out and saying, no, as of right now, the Cowboys are the ninth best team in the NFL. Insulting.
Well, pinch me, I'm dreaming. I mean, I've lived for this moment, since I've been here in November. And this is my first opportunity to talk to RJ Ochoa on the air and get the inside poop, the knowledge upon knowledge of what in the world the Cowboys were thinking at the second pick.
RJ Ochoa, manager and editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys. He joins us now on the Buyers Barricade guest line. RJ, how you doing today, my man?
I'm doing really well. I had some beef jerky, some pretzels, and hummus for lunch. So I'm full of nutrients, and I'm excited that the draft is over and that we have a class that we can dive in on and analyze a little bit further.
Did you give a letter grade to the Cowboys as to what they did in the draft?
I did. I'm the only person who does anything like that. It's a really unique and original idea. I gave each pick a letter grade. Some were pluses and some were minuses, but as a whole, I gave the draft class a B. I do feel like there's a negative stigma with B. Like people think of B as like, oh, that's really, that's just like average or whatever. It's really hard. Like I think we make A's disingenuous. There should only be like 1 to 2 A's a year. It's really hard to have your draft class be an A.
Now, is Stephon Gilmore part of your draft analysis there? Because to me, Stephon Gilmore, Brandon Cooks, draft capital was used for them. I consider them part of the draft class in a weird way.
I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I wouldn't do that though. I wouldn't put DeAndre Swift as a part of the Eagles draft class. I mean, I know they executed the trade over draft weekend, whereas Dallas did it, prior to. The draft grade, I think, is as it relates to the players you did all the homework on, the way you played the board, the way you played the league, the way you gambled, the way you lost, the way you won, and the way you fulfilled whatever positions of need you had. And so, yeah, those are awesome moves objectively, but they happened a little bit further back, and so I think they're separate things.
Okay, RJ, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The Cowboys decide not to move up. Decide to pass on 3 very obvious tight ends that went before. Why was Schoonmaker so, I guess, the right pick at number for the second round with the Cowboys?
I think, what made this draft so interesting was it was in no way chalk relative to what the Cowboys have talked about. And that's a new thing. For the most part, what they've said in the month leading up to the draft has been kind of like the Mordor's map in Harry Potter. Like you've been able to kind of follow it to a T with what they're going to do in the draft. But they bluffed a lot. I mean, they lied. I mean, they told us we're in love with Michael Mayer. We're going to have such a hard time turning him down. He was on board for them at 26, and they said no. And so I think that people marry themselves to one idea, one philosophy, and say you've got to draft for now. You've got to draft for the future. You've got to draft the best player available. When in reality, the truth is somewhere, maybe not 50-50 between, but somewhere in the middle of those two opposite ends. And so I think Luke Schoonmaker represents an answer in the here and now. He is, far and away a superior athlete to any of the tight ends on the current roster. And I think that that's lost. I think people see him and just see Dalton Schultz, just see your kind of run-of-the-mill tight end. I mean, the reality is that, he didn't play, for Tennessee. He didn't play for a team that threw the ball 1,000 times. I think Michigan averaged like less than 26, passing attempts a game. That's just not what they did. And so when you consider how he works and his athletic testing and the fact that he's now the best athlete playing the position for the Cowboys, I think he gives them an option to block on the running game, which is really important for them. And he gives them another option downfield. Everybody is so concerned or is so married to the idea that Jake Ferguson is the answer. When it comes to yards for the catch per reception, and we're talking about a really limited sample size because Jake Ferguson's only been in the NFL 1 year, he averaged like 2.6 yards before the catch per reception. So you're talking about a tight end that was only used on these crossing drag routes. I think Luke Schoonmaker is a guy that can get a little bit more vertical over the middle of the field. And as an athlete, I think he can handle himself a little bit better than some of the other players on the Cowboys roster.
Talking to RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys. So between now and Oxnard, what is the one position area that the Cowboys have to focus on when it comes to we need to get some bodies in and shore up that part of the team?
I mean, you can make an argument for kicker, and as far as getting bodies in, because they really don't have a viable option. I know that's not a sexy answer, but the Cowboys didn't draft one, and they didn't even sign one in undrafted free agency. They did sign Jonathan Garibay last year out of Texas Tech, and everybody thought that he would be the answer, and that kind of blew up in their face. Robbie Gould's the name that everybody wants to focus on, so maybe that is the direction they ultimately go in. As far as things they have to figure out, though, I don't think they'll bring in anybody new. But they, everybody thought like they're gonna draft one of these guards really high and get themselves a starting left guard, but they didn't. I mean, they passed on Steve Avila in the first round and reportedly didn't have too high of a grade on him. And they released some war room footage Sunday, where it showed them debating between Mozzie Smith and Matthew Bergeron, the guard who went to the Falcons at the top of the second round. And so they specifically decided that we're good. And then, in fact, in that conversation, Will McClay mentions that they kind of have enough options. So they have to figure out. I mean, and some of this is a good problem. Some of it is a weird problem. Is Tyler Smith going to play at left guard? Is he going to play at left tackle? What does that mean for Tyron Smith? If Tyler is at left tackle, who's your left guard? Is Terrence Steele going to be ready? If he's not ready, then who's playing right tackle? There's an awkward game of musical chairs that has to happen, and some of it is contingent upon health and other parameters like that.
Well, let's focus really on what you just talked about and break it down a little bit better for us, because I'm concerned that they pass on an offensive guard. You can talk about, well, offensive player that is multifaceted, can play different positions. Maybe there's a player out there that could have been a backup center and that has a guard potential. Bottom line, this offensive line needs support in some form or fashion. You talked about moving, 4 or 5 different pieces to the puzzle. By mid-season, they're going to have challenges. Every team does. So what are they going to be the answers when all of a sudden they're short 1 or 2 players?
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of depends on which, it's red pill, blue pill time. Morpheus is offering them to you, and you've got to decide, what adventure you really want. And so, do you want to try this Tyron at left tackle thing one more time? Because it is kind of silly to say that, you would start week 1 and put a healthy Tyron Smith on the bench, but you kind of have to do that if you want to put Tyler Smith at left tackle. Now, that being said, if Terrence Steele isn't ready to go week 1, then Tyron is probably playing right tackle. But that's the awkward situation they found themselves in. Tyron's contract that they restructured works out really well for them, and they don't have to pay him a lot of money if he doesn't play. But if he doesn't play, they're obviously down that really, really good offensive lineman. And so I think they have to fully commit, and it sounds like they're willing to commit to Tyler Smith at left tackle. You got to hope and cross your fingers that Terrence Steele is available on the right side. And at left guard, they did sign Chuma Edoga in free agency. They've got Matt Farniok. I mean, they have, 3 or 4 names, and I know that's not an optimistic kind of thing to lean on, but they do have, from a quantitative standpoint, bodies that they can play. And so they did draft a tackle with guard flexibility in the 5th round, and Asim Richards out of North Carolina. One of their higher-rated undrafted free agents, TJ Bass, has some guard potential out of Oregon. And so it could be one of those dudes, but that's probably their biggest hole right now.
I just hope that Schoonmaker at 58, ahead of Torrance, offensive guard from Florida, at 59, does not come back to bite them, though.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair, and you can argue that they made the wrong decision. They reportedly didn't have as high of a grade on Torrance as kind of your consensus mock drafted. And while that maybe doesn't help either of us sleep better tonight, they have a pretty proven track record at evaluating offensive linemen, and they've earned the benefit of the doubt, and that's been a really popular phrase to say over the course of the last week or so. But they do also have the option of playing Tyler Smith at left guard, and so again, I find it interesting that they kind of chopped that up all the way up to the draft, and that they didn't go down that road. And whether it was gamesmanship, whether it was reacting to the way things went, they seem comfortable at least moving forward with what they currently have.
With RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys, I believe the next big day in the NFL is May 11th. Next week, that's when they release the schedules for all the different teams. We do know that the Cowboys are going to be playing the teams from the AFC East. I'm looking forward to seeing that Buffalo game. Is that Buffalo game going to be in October or is it going to be in December? Big things like that. But for me right now, and if I'm thinking wrongly, let me know about this. But I'm looking at the Cowboys right now, and I personally believe that the team is better now in May compared to what it was in January because of Stephon Gilmore, because of Brandon Cooks, and because of the draft that they had. I think that they're a better team now. But the schedule is going to be so much harder compared to what it was last year that, in my opinion, we could see a team that is actually better on the field, but might not win 12 games. Do you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really fair. And for what it's worth, I mean, to your point, they visit Buffalo. So, I mean, when that game is a big factor just because of weather conditions. And
Right.
That's not the case with other games. But, yeah, I mean, sorry to pledge, but the Cowboys were fortunate to play the AFC South last year, which was the worst division in the NFL. And so the whole NFC East did. And I don't think that's a coincidence with at least partly why there were 3 teams from the NFC East in the playoffs. And to be fair, all of them won a playoff game at the very least. There were 3 of the final 4 teams in the division around on that side. But yeah, I mean, you got to play the AFC East, and the Jets got better. The Dolphins are still lurking. The Patriots are always Patriots, and the Bills are really tough. I mean, you got to play the NFC West this year. I mean, the Cardinals look really bad, but the Rams figured to bounce back. The Niners have the Cowboys number, and the Seahawks have one of the best drafts of anybody in the class. Now, you don't have to play the first place schedule that you had to play last year. But you got to play the Lions. They're a very good team. You got to Michael Jimenez, the Saints, and we all know that they can get cute once or twice in a while. And then,
Justin Herbert.
You never know. Yeah, you never know. That's the thing. You got to play the Chargers too. And so you just never know how things are going to break. Sometimes you get lucky. I mean, when are you going to play certain teams, or guys going to be back from injury or whatever? But yeah, I think that they're a better team. I think that they've closed the gap with the Eagles. I think regression will come for the Eagles in some senses, but I think it'll come for the Cowboys too. I mean, they did not suffer at the hands of regression last year as far as takeaways and sacks. I thought they were totally due to suffer for that, and it seems like they did adjust for that. That's why I think a lot of people are so high on them. They've proven that they're a team who can be a playoff team 2 years in a row, which is a super low bar to clear. But they're trying to restore some order after 3 decades of futility.
That is RJ Ochoa, manager and editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys. Thanks for being with us, my man.
Yeah, and
Miss you, RJ.
And don't forget RJ on every Friday morning, 7:30 and 9:30 with R&R in the morning. His new time, 7:30, 9:30, R&R in the morning. Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks a lot. I hope one of you has a bag of famous cookies from the vending machine.
Very nice.
Take care.
RJ was on the Buyers Barricade guest line. Buyers Barricade provides traffic control, rental, and sales for San Antonio and beyond online at buyersbarricade.com. Kielbasa Smoke Meats phone line is 656 ESPN 656-3776.